Thank you so much for joining. My name is Pianpian. I'm the founder and CEO of Amotions. Amotions is a platform to help you increase success and happiness by developing important skills such as interpersonal skills, soft skills. And we're very happy to have David Bradford here. Dr. David Bradford is a senior lecturer at Stanford and also founder of Stanford's Touchy Feely course, also known as interpersonal course. And he has co-authored multiple books. One of them is Connect, Building Exceptional Relationship with Family, Friends, and Colleagues. Dr. Bradford, we're really happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here in our difficult technology, but let's go ahead.
Yes, sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much again for the audience for joining. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Dr. Bradford, is there anything else you would like to add to your introduction about yourself?
No, why don't we talk about the book and about relationships?
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, I think the book is very intriguing. I read it and I have it here. Everyone should get it if you haven't. What are the key takeaways you would like the audience to get from this book?
How to get the book?
No, like what are the key takeaways? Like if they want to know what are the key learnings from the book, what do you think are the key learnings?
Yeah, the book is really about how to build more meaningful relationships. And if we see relationships as on a continuum, there are some people who are acquaintances, some people who are closer colleagues, some people are friends, who are more intimate others. And we say at the upper end, there are exceptional relationships, but we ought to see relationships on a continuum. What the book describes is how to move along that continuum, even if you don't reach exceptional. Not all relationships can be or should be. It would take too much effort. But if we're aware of what it takes to develop relationships, we have a choice about how deep we and the other person wants to go. Now, in that, we've identified 6 key characteristics in developing a relationship. The first one is, to what extent can I be myself? Now, this doesn't mean that I share everything, but am I sharing what is relevant to us in our relationship? Or am I holding back significant parts? Or even worse, am I spinning an image that really isn't me? It really isn't me, because I think that's what will get your approval. The second dimension is, am I doing things which makes it easier for you to be yourself? Or do you feel judged by me or inhibited by me? Third, do we have confidence that when we share things about ourselves, that is becoming more vulnerable, more open, that information won't be used against us, because that's being inhibiting for both of us. Fourth is, can we be honest with each other? Do I mean what I say, and do I say what I mean, as the phrase goes? And can we trust and not have to read between the lines? Fifth, can we raise and productively resolve disagreements and conflict? And sixth, are each of us committed to the other person's growth and development? Now, there are a whole series of competencies that deal with those 6, but paying attention to those 6 could give us a clue as to which ones are most relevant for a particular relationship and making it deeper and more important.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all those 6 points. And if someone asks you, like, would you be able to summarize in a concise way how to actually build exceptional relationships? Would you be able to summarize that?
I would say you build it by paying attention to these 6. Am I sharing stuff that's relevant? Am I really interested in you and wanting to know you? Am I committed to building a deeper relationship and building trust between us? I think all of those are derivative from those 6. Or am I holding back things? Am I annoyed, or are there disagreements that we aren't dealing with? And that can keep a relationship from developing. And do I not feel that you're really committed to my growth? that also inhibits growth of the relationship. So I think paying attention to these 6 give a clue as to what is most important in this specific relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very helpful to hear. Thank you so much. Your video is off, by the way. Is that what you want?
Okay, let's see if I can put that on.
Mhm.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question that I collected from previously from the audience.
Okay.
Curious, what do you think are the barriers and pitfalls for building exceptional relationships? And what are those, among those barriers and pitfalls, what could be conscious and unconscious things that we should look out for?
Can you went in and out, so repeat the question. What are
the barriers for building exceptional relationships? And among those, which ones could be conscious and unconscious that we should look out for?
Well, in a sense, I've come back again to often the 6 give us a clue as to what is needed. But there is one special thing which I think deals specifically with exceptional. Often we're in a very, very good relationship. It's very important to us. And something happens that gets in the way. The other person does something that bothers us or annoys us or distances us. And we're faced with the issue of, do I raise it or do I not? And the fear we have is, if I raise it, will it open up a can of worms? Will it ruin the relationship we now have? And often we find that to move to exceptional, but this also holds all along the continuum, I have to raise the issue that potentially could damage it. But if I have the competencies of not blaming the other, of sticking with my feelings, of being able to raise my concerns, often raising the issue that could potentially damage the relationship is what is needed to move it to the next level. And we often say, oh, let's leave sleeping dogs lie. And then the relationship stays there or starts to degrade. That's right. That's right. And holding the vision of what we want is one way to build that commitment. To say, this is what I want with you. This is what I think we could have. Is this what you want? And what could we do to get it? And those goals change as the relationship grows. We may achieve those goals and then say, gee, that's really great, but I'm now seeing a new possibility.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you. So curious, there are audience that asks about that work in different companies, and they ask, like, do you have any tips for people to understand and improve skills for dealing with organizational politics and unspoken communication? Is that something that you think they can also learn?
Pianpian, you again tuned out. I couldn't hear the whole question. So
Yeah.
there's something when you're talking that sometimes it doesn't come through. So let's try it again.
So what tips do you have for people who want to improve their understanding of unspoken communication and organizational politics if they work at companies, for example?
So I'm trying to see if I understand the question. So how do you handle politics in an organization or unstated assumptions? Is that what you're asking?
That's right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about unstated assumptions. I think one of the best ways to handle unstated assumptions is to state them. So we have a colleague and you sort of wonder, whether in order to get along, I've got to agree with what people say. Hopefully I have enough of a relationship with that person I could say, well, gee, John, I'm trying to understand how things are done around here. And it sort of seems to me that this is a unstated sort of rule. Do I have that right? And check it out. And usually if we take the risk of checking it out, the other person is going to respond also with an answer saying, well, yeah, that really is true. And here's how we handle it. Or no, I don't think it's true, but here's what you might be picking up. Now, in terms of politics, remember, in an organization, you're going to build different levels of relationships with different people. You're not going to build close relationships with everybody. You don't have the time. It isn't necessary. So the first thing to do is to do what is called a stakeholders analysis of saying, who are the crucial people I need in order to get my job done? Often, almost always, it's a boss, it's some key peers, there may be some people in another department that you need in order to get your work done. That's where you're going to pay your attention. And what you're going to try and do is you're first going to try to understand them. You're going to try to understand what it is that they need. How is it that you can help them be more successful because you want them to be more successful? Also, you may want to share what you want the relationship to be like. So I may go back to John, I may say, this organization seems pretty political, but I would like that not to be part of our relationship. How do you feel about that? And this is how I'm seeing politics playing out. For example, I see frequently that people say one thing to your face, another behind your back. I would like that not to be true with our relationship. So we're starting to make it explicit about what we want. If now I experience John doing something, rather than jumping to the conclusion he's a devious, untrustworthy person, I'm going to try to understand him. And I'm going to try and say, gee, John, I thought we talked about this, and this is the behavior that I saw. We talked about X, and I heard from somebody else that you said Y. I don't know if you said it, but I'm worried about that because I want to have a high degree of trust with you. So we raise it. And it's likely that he's got a reasonable explanation. And also what I've conveyed is, this is really what I want with you, which is a relationship affirming sort of statement.
That's very helpful to hear. Thank you. So like the expectation is that you will build different types of relationship and different levels of relationship with people in the organization. And again, yes, both sides need to have certain commitment to work together to build a certain level of relationships, right?
And it will be in different degrees. And what we may have to talk about is, here are the areas in which we're in competition. Well, that's the reality. Where there's only so much money to go around. I want more, you want more. But what are the areas in which we need to collaborate? And can we make sure that those areas of competition don't get in the way of the times we need to collaborate? So, and again, there's going to be differential degrees of closeness with each of these people, but is it meeting my goals of getting my job done? And what I want to be clear about is there's a difference between a good working relationship and friendship. So many of the people in my organizations that I work with are not my friends, but we have a good working relationship. And some of my friends I wouldn't want to work with. Those are two different dimensions. And we tend to confuse them. We tend to say, well, gee, because I don't want to have a drink with so-and-so, we can't have a good relationship. That's not necessarily true. We can still be clear about what we need from each other and be direct and be honest with each other.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Some comments from the audience as well. So there's different types of relationship, work relationship and friendship, personal relationships. So yeah, that's very helpful to know. I think the book talks about relationship that have multiple interactions and people have multiple interactions in different settings. Curious now in the pandemic era, when most people can't meet in person, are there ways you suggest to think about building relationship, how to build great relationship virtually? And also if people don't have chances to interact so many times, for example, like I think in the MBA course that you taught, people can meet over a quarter, but when people don't have such chances to have long interactions, what are the key ways that they can still build good relationships virtually and over maybe less interactions?
Yeah, in a sense, email is one of the worst ways to build a relationship, particularly if you're annoyed at somebody. Never use email. At least use the phone if you can't be face-to-face, or use Zoom. I have a colleague who once observed with Zoom, and she said, gee, the good thing about Zoom is we cut to the chase and cut out other stuff. And I wonder what we cut out. We may actually cut out what allows me to personally know you. So here is something that I've seen executives in Silicon Valley do, where their meetings are all by Zoom. The leader says, we're going to spend the first 10 minutes not on the agenda, but on getting to know each other. So each person has 60 seconds to say, if you really knew me now, you would know. And you would know that I'm a little distracted. My son is sick. You would really know that I'm excited about this new project we're doing. You would know that I'm concerned about a client that we have that we might lose. And they have 60 seconds to do that. And they go around. The leader does it too. And then everybody then has 30 seconds to say, the thing that most struck me when I heard was when Mary said X. And what really struck me was when Juan said Y. And what they find is that 10 minutes allows them to make the personal connection. Now, we are starting to be more face-to-face. Our tendency is going to be to focus on tasks. So I would urge that we double down on getting to know people when we have that opportunity face-to-face. And I'm going to guess that in the future, we're going to be doing a lot of task work at home and over Zoom. And we're going to be going to the office to build those personal relations where I can know the other person, I can know what they need, I can know how to connect with them better. So we need to pay more attention to use every opportunity we can to build these personal relationships that we used to have 40, 50 hours at the office where I could drop by your office, we could have coffee together, go to lunch and so on. We now have to pay special attention to fill in that need.
That makes a lot of sense. Kind of allocate some time to get to know each other instead of just get straight to work projects. I think that's very important. I'm going to try to put this into practice and see if the audience and myself can get to know you in a personal level as well. What's the reason that you wrote this book?
Oh, I'd be glad to. This book is derivative of the course that you mentioned, the interpersonal dynamics, also known as Touchy Feely course. And we saw this course had a powerful effect on students. People often said it's transformational, it's life-changing. And I want to say that as a teacher, we often don't have that impact on students. So to have a course in which students say, you changed my life. I can now talk to my parents in a way I never used to before. I now can resolve issues that before would have upended me. Was very, very gratifying. And what we realized, we actually had our editor who said, not everybody can afford going to Stanford, why not make this available to the world? And Carol and I want to bring this to the world. And that's very important to me. This is about the end of my career. I'm emeritus now, not teaching anymore. That I want to have part of my heritage being that we do change the world. And we're gratified. We get emails, people say, this book helped me have a conversation I never thought I could have. It resolved a difficult issue I had with my boss that might have cost me my job. That's that's the impact that we want to have. And that's what's important to me personally, because I think we have to answer for how have we spent our life. And this is one way that I'm going to say, this is what I've done.
Yes, I think this book is very powerful, and I think it will benefit a lot of people in the world. And we're actually hoping to apply some of the learnings from your book in Emotions as a product to see if we can set up that kind of environment for people to learn and using your insights as well. So yeah.
If I can also suggest that you look at our website, because on there is a questionnaire which people might find helpful to do a self-diagnosis. And our website is Connect and Relate, as if it's one word, connectandrelate.com. And there's also articles on there which expand on this. And I think that people will find that and the book quite helpful.
Yes, I look at those questionnaires myself. I think very helpful to just kind of know where you stand before you start working on this. Some of the questions that I have gathered include, how do you, if you want to build a relation with someone, someone new, how do you get that person to be having that kind of commitment to build a relationship with you if you're meeting someone new?
Well, people aren't on the front end going to say, yeah, let's build a relationship. They've got to see the benefit. I think that we need to build a relationship by talking about ourselves. Well, we need to share about ourselves. We need to be more personal. But I find that other people are really quite interesting. And if we are interested in them, they, in a sense, find that very rewarding. So are you interested? Do you want to get to know that person? Do you want to understand, let's go back to the work situation, what they want to get from this job, why they like working there, what are some of the concerns they have? I'm not trying to solve their problems, but I'm trying to get to know them. And I think that if we do that more, if we really try to get to know people, they're going to say, gee, this is a rewarding interaction. And that's going to make them want to have deeper interactions, because most of our interactions in life are really quite superficial and aren't very rewarding. But to have a relationship where somebody's interested in you, asks you more about yourself, knows that you want to know them, I think that's, we don't have to say, gee, do you want to build a relationship? That's the process of building a relationship that they're going to want even more.
So having genuine curiosity is the key about the other person. Is trying to learn about the person that you're interacting with.
Yes, and the curiosity has to be without judgment. It can't be the prosecuting attorney of, I want to find out everything about you, but am I really interested in you? And I think too often we aren't. And then we wonder why relationships stay at a superficial level.
Yeah, that's right. I think when everyone is so busy and have a lot of things on the plate, it's easy to kind of focus on the task in hand instead of
Yes.
trying to get to know each other in the personal level. Yeah.
And what we have to remember is that organizations are held together by a network of relationships, not by the organizational chart. And the more you can build significant, not exceptional, but significant relationships with more people in the organization, it's going to be a tighter organization and probably less political.
That's right. What are the good questions you recommend when you're learning about someone and getting to know someone in a more personal level?
Well, I think if we really listened, we would know what questions there are. So I think that if we were building a relationship, you've talked about this organization. Obviously, it's important to you. I would want to know what you hope to achieve. Why is it personally important? Like you wanted me to share what was personally important about the book. So already that's where I would go, personally. So I've done something that's upset that person. My first tendency is to explain myself and defend myself. I need to set that aside. I need to say, well, Simone, you really seem pissed at me, and I've clearly done something. Now, in the book, we talk about the model of feedback, of sticking with your reality. It's likely that Simone is going to be making character assumptions about me. She might say, well, David, you're just inconsiderate. And what we say in the book is you have to focus on behavior and the effect of that on you. So if she were to say that to me, I'd say, well, gee, I'm sorry, not my intention, but clearly I've done something. So I'm going to force her to name the behavior. What have I done, Simone? I just so pissed you off. Well, she said, you interrupted me twice, and that's inconsiderate. And I think that's why you're not a caring person. And I, by the way, have had people say that to me because I do tend to interrupt. I'd say, well, again, not my intention, but I see that my interrupting has done that, and I'm sorry. And I really am sorry because I didn't intend that. And then I'm probably going to say, I have a tendency to do that. It's for me not a sign of being inconsiderate. That's not my intention. It's usually because I'm really curious and I think I've gotten your main point and want to move on. But I hear it bothers you. So what can we do about it? And we now get into problem solving. So if somebody's mad at me, I want to find out why. Now, it might be that it doesn't work out that quickly, that easily. But again, what I'd say is, Simone, we have to work together. We're interdependent. We've got to at least get somewhat past this so that we can be functional colleagues. What is it going to take? What do I need to do? And I've got to be willing to look at myself. Now, I'm probably going to say, look, I'm probably not going to stop interrupting. That's so much of me. I'm going to work on not doing it. And I'd like a little bit of forgiveness. And when I do it, call me on it. Well, we've worked out a working relationship that's probably going to be a little better. But now we've moved past her being angry at me to us finding out what the issue is.
So the key is having some curiosity to understand why the person is angry. Sure. And then having the humility to apologize. And then
and you see here I'm interrupting you. So, and you see what's important is Simone is likely to make a character attribution of me. We do that all the time. We say that's what gets us in trouble. We say, oh, you don't want to be a team player. You have a bad attitude. That's what causes defensiveness and gets the other person to want to explain themselves. So when somebody does that to you, can you hold down your defensiveness, your desire to explain yourself? And as you just said, move into curiosity. But it's that labeling that tends to hook us when we do it to others or they do it to us.
That's right. Yeah. I think your book emphasized on feedback should be focused on the behavior, and then the person giving the feedback should not try to guess the intent of the person. It's more just the behavior and how the behavior makes you feel, instead of accusing the other person's intention.
Yes, what we say is stick with what you know. I can observe the behavior and I know my response. What I don't know is your intention or motives. And stay away from that, because if I point out the behavior and share my response, if I say, Steve, when you do X, I feel Y, Steve is likely to tell me why he did it. So I don't need to guess his motive. He'll tell me.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Being able to let the other person state the intent instead of guessing and making assumptions. Now, if since, I mean, with the virtual environment, it's harder for us to observe behaviors when you're not in meetings. For example, if a team leader is frustrated that his team members is not completing projects as fast as she expected, but she can't see the behavior, she only knows the results. In that case, how would you suggest this leader to give feedback?
Well, I always start with the assumption that the other person's well-intentioned. Remember the phrase, the road to hell is lined with good intentions. Rarely, so if this is a direct report of mine and the report comes in not very good, it's unlikely that the direct report said to himself, well, I'm purposely going to screw up this report. That's very unlikely. So I'm going to start with the assumption that's well-intentioned. Now I'm going to get into curiosity. And I'm going to say, well, Sharon, I am disappointed in this report. I'm sharing my feelings, point out the report. It doesn't seem to me to have the depth of analysis that I know you can do. Can you tell me how you went about this, and why you came up with this? So now again, that has to be a question. I'm not saying, can you tell me why the hell you came up with this? That's not a question. That's an attack. Can you tell me why you came up with this? And Sharon might say, well, I thought you just wanted a first run at this, not an in-depth analysis. Well, we've now found some of the problems. I think I would say then, do you remember what I said that conveyed that impression? So I don't want to do that again. And she may know that, or she may say, no, I don't. And then I may say, when you're unsure about the thoroughness of it, I wish you'd check with me next time so we don't have this confusion. And I'm going to work to be more explicit, but I want you to also work to make sure that I am clear. Okay, now we've resolved it. But I want to make sure I haven't jumped to the conclusion at first that she's an incompetent, uncaring, slobby sort of subordinate, when there may be other factors at work.
So back to being curious and understand the reason behind certain results, instead of assuming bad intentions or other characteristics. Yeah. And how would you help this person if there are reasons that, like, the person is well-intentioned but still, like, it's not meeting your expectation?
I'm sorry. So the other person is well-intentioned, but
the result is not meeting your expectation. How would you help this person if you're the manager or leader?
Well, first of all, we've now identified the problem that she thought I only wanted a surface response. So she goes back and she does it again, and it still isn't quite good. I think what I'd first do before she went back, I'd say, is it now clear the level that I want? And hopefully she says yes. And if not, we'll clear it up then. But she comes back and it still isn't good. I think then I'd want to sit down and say, we seem to have different expectations. Let me show you the level of analysis I want. I want to have you have checked with this and this and this and this. And I'd go over the report. I'd say, this is what my expectations are. So now I, in a sense, am coaching her. And I think a part of our job as a leader is to develop our direct reports. After all, we hire people for their potential, and we want to help them be more competent. It helps them, it helps us. So now I've coached her. Now if she comes back a third time and is at that level, then we have another sort of conversation to say, hey, I'm really bothered. I put in this time to coach you, and I don't see the results. What's going on? And it might be, we don't know what's going on. It may be that she doesn't have the technical background that she needs. And we need to talk about her being in another sort of job. It may be that she's not interested. Well, then we need to talk about how is she going to handle being in a job that doesn't interest her? And again, is outplacement going to help her as well as help me? I don't know. But again, we're exploring. But I'm just not going to hit her over the head because that doesn't get at what the issue is or issues are. Uh-oh. Let me call you again. I think.
One moment, David is calling me back. The phone lost connection. Thank you for your patience.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, the best, I would, with all humbleness, urge you to buy our book, and we lay out these competencies in some detail and give suggestions about how to use it. But the best way to learn them is through practice, that you keep on trying. And so let's go back to the example of me with Sharon, and I'm trying to coach her. I think at the end, I would say, has this been helpful? Are there ways I could have done it better? So I'm also learning how to be a better coach. And I may also want to help her be better in knowing how to ask the sort of questions that I can coach on. And I may say, well, Sharon, if you would have shared where you were confused, that that would have been much more helpful. So again, it's a constant learning process, but it's through practice. It's continuous practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're hoping to create some kind of environment for people to practice in a safe way as well. So could be groups and practice sessions through Emotions for people to practice together. Do you think that simulated environments could work as well?
Well, again, I don't think we need special times. I think we use all of our work interactions, and we constantly, at least a model I would have is, can I get this job done, and can we learn something in the process? That it ought to be a constant learning because the world is changing. And we need to acquire new competencies or apply our old competencies in a different way in this new situation. So I don't think we have to set aside necessarily a special time. By the way, people are going to say, well, is there time for this? Think of the amount of time that is wasted with confusion, with people avoiding each other, with people not coming through when they should. When I work at organizations, I just see a colossal waste of time going on all the time. And somebody once said, there's nothing more efficient than honesty. And I think that if we say, hey, what's going on? This seems to be a problem. What's getting in the way? What are we going to do about it? That doesn't take a lot of time. It takes some willingness to raise a difficult issue, to look at yourself, to hear things that you may not be doing as well as you could. But if you're not willing to learn, why would anybody else be willing to learn?
Right. I think applying the learnings and continuing to practice is the key for some of these. And what are the ways that you suggest someone to think about if they're a leader of an organization or team and they want to cultivate the kind of environment that the team members would be interested and would build good relationship with each other? What are the suggestions for them? Do you have for them?
Well, one of the advantages of being a leader is you can start to set some of the rules. You can set your expectations. So if I was a leader, I'd say, look, I want to build a culture in which we're constantly improving. We need to do that to be competitive with other organizations. And what I want is I want us to be committed to our learning and to each other's learning. What I would then want to do is I'd want to model what's going on. I would want to be a coach to different members. I would first do the coaching one-on-one outside, but at some point I would want to start to build a team where we can start to do that coaching within the team, where I can say, look, I think this report isn't as thorough as it needs to be. Rather than us spending more time at this meeting, I'd like you to go back and do another cut at it. But we need to have a conversation about the level of analysis. So I'm being open about my dissatisfaction. Or if I see that I've done something, I've shut somebody down, I'm going to want to stop and say, did I do something that bothered you? And the subordinate, being worried, might say no, which is really yes. Am I going to say, hey, it sounds like I did? You know, what did I do? So I'm modeling my openness to learning. So I think that I'd be clear about my expectations at the front end, and then I'd try to engage in the appropriate behavior, and I would support members doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So kind of setting some expectations for the team and then use some behaviors to model what could be a good way of foundations for building good relationships.
Yeah. It's when I talk with managers, often they blame their subordinates. And I find most of the problem is with the manager. And often inadvertently. I think it's hard to hear when you have screwed up. Mm-hmm. But so I actually quite recently was at a meeting and so on, and one of the persons did something, got called on it, and he said, God, I'm sorry, I behaved like a jerk. And I said, Jim, you weren't a jerk. That behavior wasn't the best. But you know, you don't have to put yourself down. Yeah, that was not the wisest thing to say, but we recovered. And so we don't need people beating themselves up and beating each other up.
Right. So having the humility and kind of time to do some self-reflection to see what are things that from our own standpoint we can control and we can do better before putting blames on other people.
Right, right. Yeah, in essence, in other work I've done, I've developed a model called the heroic leader. And when leaders act heroic and think they have to have all the answers, they don't fool anybody because they don't have all the answers. And it's much better that they be more human and say, this is what I know and this is what I don't know.
Right. Yeah, having the humility to admit that for things that we don't know, and being willing to learn from other people as well.
Yeah, we think we can fool other people, and we can't. So if we try to pretend, people see through that pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And what suggestions do you have people, for example, sometimes you only have a chance for one meeting with someone, like 30 minutes, and then that might decide whether that could have a second meeting, result in a second meeting, or like continue to build that relationship. What are the good ways for someone to establish as much as of a good connection in the first meeting? That could be in, for example, interviewing or dating context. Do you have suggestions for people in that case?
Well, if we're interviewing somebody for a job, I've always thought it's a mutual con game. The applicant is trying to present themselves in perfect terms, and the boss is trying to present the organization in perfect terms. Years ago, actually it was Ford Motor Company, decided in the interview they would tell the interviewer exactly what it was like working at Ford. And they found they got fewer acceptances than they had before, but they had subsequently much lower turnover rate. So what does it cost when we do this mutual con game? If I'm not going to fit into this organization, wouldn't it be better that I knew that in the interview rather than spending 6 months of my life and then discovering it? Again, to what extent can we be more honest, even if this is a first meeting, which doesn't mean that you tell everything, but you, in a sense, try to cut down on the amount of spin that the applicant and the boss tend to engage in.
Mm-hmm. Right. So being able to be honest and show the real size of things instead of kind of putting on cosmetics.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good suggestion. Thank you. And are there suggestions you have for people, like besides reading the book and practicing daily, what other daily practices or suggestions you would have for someone who want to continue to hone in leadership skills, soft skills, interpersonal skills, if they cannot attend the MBA course?
Right. Yeah. At the end of each chapter, we have a section called Deepen Your Learning. And the first are a series of reflection questions, which ask you to take the material of that chapter and reflect on yourself. So, for example, chapter 3 is about self-disclosure. Mm-hmm. And we ask the reader to say, what aspects of yourself do you have a hard time sharing? Then we have them select a relationship they want to deepen. And we say, is there something that's relevant to that relationship that you want to share that you haven't shared now? Well, go out and try it. So there's a whole series of suggestions. And, once you have done that chapter, you may want to read the chapter again, because it probably now has more meaning to you. And you can apply that to other sort of relationships. So it's a process of constant practice, constant learning.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw on your website you also suggested that people form groups to kind of apply the learnings of the books and practice together, right?
Yes, I think that would be great. You may want to set up your own sort of support group, and you could take turns of people saying, "Gee, I've got this issue with my boss," and rather than other people giving you advice, can they help you think through what would be challenging for you, different approaches you might want to consider, and what works and what doesn't.
So so it's more like remind each other on the framework and like how to think through each scenario instead of telling someone what to do. It's helping someone think through the scenarios.
That's right. In one of the beliefs in the coaching field is that that person has within themselves the answer to their issue. Your job is not to give them the answer. Your job is to help them think through.
Yeah, yeah, very wise. With Emotions, we're hoping to create a kind of environment to set up this kind of support group so users and the community members can support each other and do this kind of practice as well, and reading the book together, for example, and then think through different challenges and goals.
Well, I think that would be great if you could do it, and that would be a very useful function of your organization. I think we're getting close to our time.
That's right.
So is there a final question that you have?
I think one final last question. Let me see. Your book talk about conflict scenarios, and I think that's one of the big questions that I heard often. How would you suggest people to deal with conflicts and misalignment, especially when multiple people are involved?
Under conflict, under what conditions? I missed that.
Misalignment.
Misalignment in terms of expectations?
Could be expectations. Yeah.
Well, in a certain sense, that's, I think you now wonderfully given the answer, is that rather than assuming that the other person is bad or wrong, it might be that it's more an expectation issue of what each person wanted from that situation or from that interaction. And can I, without assuming that my approach is the best one, can I find out what works for you, share what works for me, and see if we can find out a way that maybe a third alternative that both of us could live by. And again, it's a problem solving, but it's also learning. Learning is not just on the individual level, but it's learning what do we need in our sort of interaction.
That's right. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it for sharing all your insights, and wisdom and the knowledge from your multiple decades of teaching of the interpersonal dynamics course through the Connect book. And thanks again for the audience for listening in and for your questions submitted beforehand or during the fireside chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much again.
Okay, thank you. It was fun. It was good.
Thank you. I'll stop the recording.